Earlier this month, the e-safety commissioner, yes, the Karen herself, ordered X, Twitter, to remove a post made by a gentleman, a Canadian, called Chris Elston, who goes on Twitter. He calls himself Billboard Chris, and he's well known. The tweet that he made was deemed by Julian Mann-Grant to be unacceptable. We might go into that. But more importantly, Chris is now in Australia, and here he is on Outsiders. Billboard Chris, Mr. Billboard, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on. You're down in Melbourne. Now, tell us first up what brought you to Australia. What is it like to be one of our e-safety commissioner's very first and major and most prominent victims of censorship? Are you that dangerous a person, Chris, that we can't hear your views on matters?
Well, I would never characterize myself as a victim. I think she's done a beautiful thing, actually, because all she's done is bring more attention to this, and I want to thank her very much. But I had this trip planned to Australia for several months, and it was perfect timing, really, for her to do this, because this has generated international media. And now Elon is even suing or taking legal action regarding that post of mine that was ordered to be taken down. So, yeah, it's just great timing. I'm in this beautiful city of Melbourne. It's amazing. I'm having conversations out on the streets with the citizens here in order to raise awareness about what I consider to be the greatest child abuse scandal in modern medicine history, this business of trying to change the sex of children.
So give us a brief rundown on that. What's your take on that? I mean, tell our viewers.
Well, sure. So there's no such thing as a transgender child. They're called girls and boys, just as they always have been. And this is really an activist-led movement that has encouraged us to treat mental illness as though it's some new civil rights movement. And we are to believe that just because a child doesn't conform to really what are regressive and sexist stereotypes, that means the child is trans. So if a girl is a tomboy, does that make her an actual boy? If a boy is more effeminate, does that mean he's somewhere on the spectrum of being a girl? This is, of course, complete nonsense. And we should be telling our children they're beautiful just as they are. That's the positive message. When you tell a girl that she's a boy and you use he, him pronouns, what you're doing is you're telling her that she was born wrong and she needs to be something she's not. And I think that's a terrible message to send. It's basically a message of self-hatred, and we need to abolish this ideology entirely. But what we can do much more quickly is stop the medical abuse of these children where they're receiving puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones.
And so Chris, I'll just clarify, you're not a mental health expert, so that I'll just raise that with our viewers, that mental health is a separate issue to this. That's your opinion regarding mental health. But I think your point about the great medical scandal is to do with puberty blockers, to do with potential castration, removing surgery that has irreversible effects and impacts on young children who, I guess we could easily argue, and we've certainly argued it on this show often enough, should not be in a position of being able to make decisions that affect their sexual lives, years into the future. Would you agree?
Well, that's right. And you don't need to be a mental health professional to know that girls are girls and boys are boys. We've known this for all of humanity. And parents know their children better than anyone else. Yet what we have today are schools, counselors, social workers, basically trying to drive a wedge between the parent-child relationship. And here in the state of Victoria, for example, any adult on school grounds can deem a child to be a mature minor and bypass the parent. And they're hiding from parents that their own child is going by a new name and pronouns. Why are schools keeping secrets from parents? They're treating parents by default as though they are automatically abusive towards their own children. They're already mandatory reporters, whereby if they think there's abuse going on in the home, they need to contact the authorities. But this is the one issue in the world where they treat parents automatically as though they're going to be a threat to their own child. It's outrageous. This is an attack on parental rights, and we need to put a stop to this in its entirety.
James.
And Chris, I mean, you must have been heartened by some of the reports that have been coming out of the UK, also France and other countries, saying that much of this medicalization that you describe is unnecessary and often very fraught. Are you a bit surprised that Australia seems to be so keen to shut down any discussion of some of these sorts of reports that are coming from medical authorities and legislative review committees and things like that in other countries?
That's right. All of my views are common sense, and they've all been backed up by every medical body in the world that has ever conducted a systematic review of all of the scientific literature. So in England, Dr. Hilary Cass, a lifetime pediatrician, not a politician, just conducted a 3.5-year review. She's released this 388-page report, basically backing up everything that I've just said, that puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, they weren't helping these children psychologically. So they're putting an end to that there in England. They're stopping it in Scotland, Finland, Sweden. We've seen progress in Germany, Norway, Denmark. Even the Academy of Medicine in France has said it's impossible to tell which of these children will grow up and out of their gender dysphoria. But we know historically from all the academic studies that were done before puberty blockers were given that the vast majority of these kids just outgrew this. This was a phase. But here in Australia, of course, they're led by the Labour Party right now, and all these left-wing parties are pushing this. No matter what evidence you present to them, they just double down and keep trying to do this more because they're not interested in truth, they're interested in virtue signaling.
Well,
Rita.
you are right. Australia is now an outlier. We're not even having a review of what's happening at these gender clinics, including at children's hospitals. What's your message to parents who are concerned? Because a lot of times this sort of craziness is led by certain activist parents who've got an ideology they want to push. But then there are just regular parents who see their kids impacted by this, whether they're seeing it on TikTok, whether they're seeing it in the schoolyard. What's your advice to parents?
So parents need to have these conversations at an age-appropriate level with their children, because if they don't, someone else is going to be having these conversations with them first. So when your kids know the truth, when they understand that they're beautiful just as they are, and these lies come for them, telling them that they might be trans just because they're a bit different, well, they'll have that shield of truth already with them. And overwhelmingly, the kids we see ending up at these gender clinics are on the autism spectrum. A lot of them have suffered sexual abuse or trauma. There might have been events in their family. These are kids in state care who are wildly overrepresented. It's all the struggling kids. So parents just need to really work with their bond with their children, because kids don't want to disappoint their parents, and be present with their kids. I would say the best thing you can do is read to your kids every night, because you improve your bond that way and you find out what was going on during the day. But just be aware and have conversations with the teachers and tell them you're not okay with them teaching gender ideology.
Rita?
And we're seeing now, we've got a lot of detransitioners who are coming forward. Some are launching legal action, but just also from reading the reports on what's gone wrong, these poor kids who are, as you say, a lot of them have got all sorts of other issues and are certainly gender confused, they're submitting to treatments that are leaving them sterile in some cases, loss of sexual function. I mean, how can a 13, 14-year-old possibly give informed consent for medical treatments that are going to leave them sterile as an adult?
Well, they can't. And never mind the 13 or 14-year-olds. This is being done to 10-year-olds, because puberty blockers are given, the scientific term for it, they're given at Tanner stage 2. So this is maybe a couple of years before girls have had their first period. They're going to be 10, 11, 12 years old, these girls and boys. And of course, they can't understand what they're signing up for. The president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, Marcy Bowers, this is a man who says he's a woman. He admits that literally none of the boys who started on puberty blockers at Tanner stage 2 have been able to have an orgasm as an adult. They're sterilizing and maiming kids and turning them into lifelong pharmaceutical patients. And we're to believe that this is love and helping them to be who they really are. Who they really are is a girl or a boy. And they don't have to conform to sexist regressive stereotypes. We should just tell them they're beautiful just as they are, because this whole ideology has been pushed by activists, not by science. And it's been a way to justify what some adults have going on by way of turning this into a whole worldwide movement. But it's all based on a lie.
Absolutely. And the tweet that you put out there was questioning the World Health Organization's experts on this very topic, and that was fairly concerning issues about who the World Health Organization, what processes they are putting in place and why, and who they are listening to. And you had more to say on that. But we've just run out of time, but I think you've answered our question beautifully, Chris, about censorship. And the whole point about censorship is the Rolling Stones and every rock group ever knew, get banned and you get popular. More people want to see what the authorities don't want you to see. And you're living proof of that. You're a rock star now. I bet you never thought you would be a rock star, but you're a rock star in Australia because they tried to ban you. The lesson is there for the authorities. Ban someone and more people will want to hear it, and because free speech is the most precious gift we have in democracies. Chris Elston, Billboard Chris, thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your time in Australia. Where can people see you if they need to see you?
Follow me on X or Instagram at BillboardChris, and I also have a website, billboardchris.com.
Fantastic. Chris Ellison, Billboard Chris, thank you very much.